Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse is now out in theaters, and it's destroying the narrative of the media. They can no longer claim that the world is filled with awful people, and that's why The Little Mermaid is failing. No, it can't do that because there's no controversy surrounding this film. And just like with Little Mermaid, it stars a minority character as the protagonist. The scores are wonderful, not just from the critics, but from everybody. And I'm going to give you my review. But there are some things that you should definitely know about this movie before going. Specifically, I'm going to tell you who should not go see this movie, and it may just help you and your family. All right, folks, welcome back to the WDW Pro channel. Happy to have each and every one of you. And by the way, happy summer. I know it's not official yet. No, the official start to summer is not until midway through June. But to me, it feels like summer now. We're into the month of June. May is behind us. I think after Memorial Day weekend, truly summer has begun. And Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse is the first successful summer movie. I suspect that this will do quite well at the box office. I think it will do quite well across the world. And I'm thankful for that. Because, in sort of a sinister twist, there were those who were attempting, with everything they had, to slime the world, to make it seem as if the world is filled with awful, awful people. And sure, there are bad people out there, and more so in some places than others. But they were trying to make it seem as if the world at large is a horrible place that doesn't want to go see movies depending on the color of one's skin, whoever is playing the lead role. And that was just wrong. And that was a very bad thing for those people to do. Well, this movie is proving that is untrue. And I'm happy to say that because that's not always been true. The world has not always been accepting of people of all different skin tones. But this time we're seeing that Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse is going to do quite well with everyone. And that makes me happy. Before we get into this, folks, if you like content like this, consider clicking the like button, share, subscribe, and you can stick it to the algorithms. When you click it, we're talking about the notification bell. Take a look at these scores. Holy cow. Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse has a 96% certified fresh rating from Rotten Tomatoes and a 97% audience score. Now, I'm not a big fan of Rotten Tomatoes as of late. In the last few years, this site has been used and manipulated in order to kind of protect the film industry and be anti-consumer. That's my opinion. But there's a way to get around that a little bit, and I want to show all of you this, and we're going to do a bit of an explanation on how you can figure out what's really going on with the movie. So let's take a look at this. Over on the tomato meter, you can see that right now this film has a 96% rating with all critics. But we really don't care so much about all critics. Now, the reason we don't care about that is because when we click on all critics, we're looking at a vast array of people who are submitting their reviews. And some of those people, in fact, perhaps even the majority of these people, have a vested interest in giving good reviews to the biggest companies, the biggest studios, because they depend on the ability to go see the premieres, go see the early access in order to have their careers. What I mean by that is, let's say they give a bad review to Disney, for example, and Disney says, you know what, don't invite them back. They're part of a small little blog. Don't invite them back. Well, you can see how that would be a problem because then they have to wait, like all the rest of us, to do their reviews. And by the way, that's why you will never see me, at least I don't think you will ever see me, do a review early on a film, is because if I do that, then I have submitted to going to see something that's sort of a quid pro quo, right? I've went and received a gift from a studio to go see it before other people. And I don't want to be that because then that privilege of going to see something early would undoubtedly have some sort of bias upon me. But continuing on. So we don't care about the all critics for that reason. We care about the top critics. And the reason we care about top critics is because these are essentially the people who are part of very large companies or are well established. And therefore, they don't have to necessarily change their opinions depending on who they are reviewing. Now, we do run into some other issues with these types of critics. We run into the issue of are they ideologically compromised? In other words, are they rewarding films that promulgate their own viewpoints, or are they simply reviewing the content of a film? I try to just review the content of a film. We'll get into the review of this movie in just a moment. But 98% out of top critics, that is fantastic. That means that this is a film that has sterling reception among the people who are most inclined to give it the more honest review. I don't know about most honest review, but more honest. But the opposite is true when it comes to the audience score. Take a look at this. If we take a look at the verified audience, you'll see that that has a 97%, but we don't care about the verified audience, right? This is flipped. The verified audience we don't care about because it's highly manipulated by the industry, we believe, because it's very limited. It's easier for them to buy fake Fandango accounts, etc., and then post their reviews in mass because they don't have to move the needle quite so much because there are less verified audience accounts by far than all audience. And so if we take a look at the all audience, you'll see that we have 96%. So when we see these two numbers align, this is when we know a movie is good. And I hate that it takes this kind of effort to understand how to work Rotten Tomatoes now. But since movies like Ghostbusters 2016, since The Last Jedi, and all those other films that had huge budgets and failed largely because people watched it and said, this sucks, and other people found out, they've tried to change Rotten Tomatoes so that they obscure what's going on. But when we find these two numbers aligning, that's when we know we have a good movie on our hands. 98% out of the top critics, 96% out of all audience. When those align, things are good. Now, we covered the review of this in the WDW Pro Show live Thursday, yesterday, 5 to 7 p.m. if you're watching this on a Friday. And my review and Steven's review were very similar. We both enjoyed the film. Let's take a look at what some of these top critics are saying. Odie Henderson of the Boston Globe says, despite my aggravation, I can see there's much to recommend about Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Chris Hewitt of the Minneapolis Star-Tribune says, not that you'd want to, but I suspect you could turn off the sound and simply delight in the beauty of this inventive film. Yes, the animation is spectacular. Sarah Michelle Fetters of MovieFreak.com says, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse is an instant classic. And you all can see exactly how well this is going. There are no splats here. And here's another one. Christian Holub of Entertainment Weekly says, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse totally exceeds expectations when it comes to visual aesthetics and character development. Now, very few of these are a perfect score. Most of them are a lesser score that is still positive. And there's no manipulation going on there, in my opinion, because I think that actually is true. So here's what I think about the film. The entire film is set up as a giant trolley car philosophical conundrum. And if you don't know what that is, it's where you have the trolley car and it's facing splitting tracks. And on one side of the track, it's going to hit something that it should not hit. Okay. Usually it's people that are strapped to the rails. And on the other side, there's either more or less people or valuable assets, whatever you want. You can construct this philosophical debate however you decide. And the idea here is that that somebody somewhere is going to suffer, and you have to decide who's going to suffer and why. And so that's a long debated issue, of course. It's actually something that's very pertinent today as we are arriving at the brink, or perhaps past it, of self-driving cars, because self-driving cars now are faced with the trolley car conundrum. In other words, when a self-driving car has to move out of the lane because of perhaps a swerving vehicle coming into its lane, the self-driving car has to decide, what if there's a child on the sidewalk, or what if there's an animal or whatnot. And so that's actually something that is very difficult. It's a very difficult moral dilemma, and it has to be decided quickly. In the case of this movie, nothing is decided quickly in terms of the trolley car issue here. And so rather than spending a brief amount of time or making it simple, it is quite convoluted. In fact, it's very convoluted. I have a philosophical problem with this movie. And don't worry, I'm not going to review it poorly. But I do have a philosophical disagreement with the movie overall, and we need to address that. My philosophical issue with this movie, and it may be an issue that you will have as well, is that this is not a complete film by any means. This is a film that has a beginning and a middle, but it has no end. And that is an artistic decision that they have made. They have determined that they are going to make a very, very long animated film, and that they're going to divide it in half. We're getting the first half now. We're getting the second half later. But my own philosophical belief is that if you release a film, that it should have a beginning, middle, and end. And it's okay if you're going to make an ongoing, episodic kind of film. That's fine with me. In the case of, for example, The Empire Strikes Back, at the end of the film, our good guys are not in a good position, but we have resolution. And that means that we've had a story that came to a conclusion, even if it's part of a larger story that has not yet unfolded. And we can see that with the Lord of the Rings trilogy. We know that each one of those films stands alone. This film does not, however. This is more akin to that feeling you had at the end of Halo 2 after you waited years to have it, and then you wanted to see what would happen with Master Chief, and the game just stopped. That's how this film does. Very far into this film, I began to realize that was going to be an issue because I thought, we're nowhere close to concluding any of this. And then with just minutes left in the runtime, a big surprise happens and big reveal. And I thought, uh-oh, this is going to be one of those. And sure enough, the movie just stops. And that's going to leave some of you unsatisfied. Now, who should not go see this film? And let me say this too. It is artistically quite the masterpiece. I mean, it's up there with John Wick 4 in terms of the artistry of this film. What John Wick 4 did to the shoot 'em up genre is it elevated it to something that we've never seen, honestly. And this, in terms of what it's doing, we've never seen this before either. This is really something. And kudos to everybody, including the higher ups at Sony, who allowed this film to be given the time, the budget, and the artistic expression to do this. It's amazing. But in terms of who should go see it and who should not, there are actually some people who should not go see this film. And how about that? So despite it being such a fantastic film, if you are prone to seizures, or if that has ever been an issue for you, I would think twice about going to see this film. And, everybody out there knows their own proclivity for having those sorts of issues. But if that's a problem, this film has jarring, bright, vibrant switches in colors rapidly, and it does it often. So this may be a film that if your family has someone like that you want to think twice about doing this. Another group of people that's a little bit surprising here. If you have a family with small children, I think they're going to drive you nuts during this movie. And that's simply because this isn't necessarily a movie for small children. With a runtime of 2 hours and 15 minutes, and combined with slightly more mature material that might frighten small children and certainly will not be understood by small children. I mean, they might like the bright lights, but beyond that, they're not going to understand what's going on. I don't think that this is a film for 5-year-olds. I don't think it's a film for 6-year-olds. Maybe they'll enjoy it, but I think they'll enjoy it for the first 30 to 45 minutes. And then you are going to have fun entertaining them in the theaters all the way until the end. And that could be frustrating for you. So those individuals, I don't think are going to enjoy the film so much. And then finally, I think you have to be rather plugged in to pop culture. You have to be young at heart in order to enjoy this film. I'm not telling you that if you're 60 that you won't like it. I'm just saying that there are many, many references to pop culture, to the latest memes, to Spider-Man. And if you are not inside that world, that's not part of your orbit of interests, then perhaps this is not a movie for you. But for everyone else, I think this is a worthwhile movie. Is it perfect? No, of course it's not perfect. And there are some virtue signals inside this film that feel very out of place. References to the real world that we live in right here don't make sense in a world that clearly is not ours. It's distinctly different. It's a completely different universe. And that feels very strange than to see political slogans inside a film that relate to our world. That doesn't narratively even jive. But whatever the case may be with that, it's still a good film. I disagree with the strategy of this film, though. Were I Sony and were I given an animated piece of content that runs close to 5 hours, instead of dividing that up into 2-hour plus slots, what I think I would have done is created a trilogy and released it 6 to 8 months each one. I don't think I would have done it this way. As it is with this one, it's a little bit long, and really it will fatigue you. It's not necessarily because it's bad that it fatigues you, but I think the sheer genius of the artistry is so much that over that 2 hours and 15 minutes, there were points towards the end where I thought this would be beautiful and I would appreciate this more had I not been inundated with so much of this stylized art for so long. Particularly, there's a scene with Gwen and a family member. That's quite poignant. The artistry behind it is beautiful, but I was a little tired at that point, and I would have preferred if that had happened towards the end of a 90-minute run, towards the end. Well, folks, I hope you enjoy this review. I wanted to do something different. I wanted to tell you who shouldn't see it, because honestly, everybody else probably should. And that's wonderful for the market. It's wonderful for those of us who are happy to see a movie that stars someone of minority descent, let's say, African descent, however you want to describe this. I don't know what to do with that terminology when this is a global movie. I don't know who the majorities or minorities are in the entire world. Perhaps it's ethnocentric of Americans to use that kind of phraseology when we're talking about a global release. But I'm happy to see someone of darker skin tone, even if it's a cartoon character, do quite well in the theaters, because I think that dissuades those fears that there are bad people in the world who don't want to see movies based on skin tone. Are there some? Sure. Do they have a larger impact on the market? Not outside of a few countries. And that's a wonderful thing. And that's something we should celebrate. That's something that we can take and say, you know what? We live in a time and a place where that is no longer a huge concern in the realm of theatricals. Wonderful. We'll take the win when we can get it. Well, folks, if you like content like this, consider clicking the like button, share, subscribe, and you can stick it to the algorithms when you click it. We're talking about the notification bell. Drop a comment down below. Have you seen Spider-Man Across the Spiderverse? Have you seen it? Did you like it? Tell us down below. And remember, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, keep learning, keep growing, and keep having fun.
Floral, it's time for you to walk the plank.
What? Why?
Because you haven't subscribed to WDW Pro yet. Nor bookmark thatpartplace.com on your web browser to get great articles from great contributors.
What?